Hi all, sorry for the change of scenery. I am currently traveling for work, but I wanted to take a moment here to review this, the Asvine V126. And if you follow this channel, you have seen this pen before. I featured it in a few shorts with other finishes, and I'll go over why I've had it in multiple finishes in just a little bit. Overall, the pen is cigar shaped and very reminiscent of the Pilot Custom 823, which we'll do a direct comparison with in just a moment. Both of the end finials are rounded, and the top finial is separated from the cap with a single metal band, which is part of the clip. The clip is very much in the Pilot style. It's triangular in shape with a ball at the bottom. It's a bent metal clip, but it's springy and functional. The cap is straight to a pretty wide cap band, which reads Asvine V126. And then we have a little bit of exposed plastic followed by a slight step down to the barrel. The cap comes off in 1 and about 1/4 turns to reveal a stainless steel number 6 size nib. I have this one in a medium, and that's noted with a cursive M in the center that's circled. And just below that, it says Asvine, and there's some nice scroll work on the outside edge of the nib. On the back, we can see a black plastic feed, which is pretty low profile. At the front of the grip section, we have a flare-up, followed by a tapering profile to a metal band, and then we have threads, which are smooth to the touch, followed by a slight step up to the barrel, and then the barrel has a very gradual taper thinning down to another metal band, followed by the end finial. The body of the pen is pretty transparent, which is great. It allows you to not only see your ink level, but also appreciate the filling system. And this is a vacuum filling system, which includes a metal rod with 2 seals at the front. The front seal is small and it acts as a shutoff valve, which prevents ink from flowing between the barrel, section, nib, and feed. And that is a good thing to have for long writing sessions because it helps prevent ink from burping out of the front due to it being heated up by your hand. And it also prevents ink spillage during air travel, which can cause ink to come out of the pen due to pressure differences. The larger seal just behind that is part of the filling system. And if we unscrew the back finial, we can see the rod retract, which opens up that shutoff valve and allows ink to freely flow throughout the pen. If I pull the rod back, we now have access to the filling system. Put the nib into ink and push down on the rod. Pushing down on that rod will create a low pressure system behind that back seal. And at the bottom of the barrel, we can see a flare out, which breaks the seal and allows ink to be drawn into the barrel. In the hand, the pen is a really nice length. It's well balanced and has pretty decent heft thanks to that vacuum filling system. And the cap posts securely and deeply. It transfers the weight just about to the crook of my hand, and it makes for a very comfortable pen to use, both posted and unposted. Though, I will note, if you unscrew the back finial, the cap no longer posts securely. And I have on occasion had the cap pull the back finial with it, which if you had the pen inked up, that would cause an inky mess. Before we get into the disassembly of the Asvine V126, I wanted to take a moment here to compare it with a few other vacuum filling fountain pens. Up top, we have the Pineider Avatar Twin Tank Touchdown, which of the pens on the table does have the most different design. It has no top finial, it has a spring-loaded clip, and the overall design is not cigar shaped, but starts with a pretty wide cap that tapers all the way down to the end finial. Also, the end finial does not unscrew like the rest of the pens on this table. Instead, it has a spring-loaded bayonet-style locking mechanism. The Pilot Custom 823 is just below that, and that shares the most design similarities with the V126. The Pilot Custom 823 does have a little bit more conically shaped finials at the top, and at the bottom it does come closer to a point rather than having a rounded edge like the V126. Also, the cap band on the 823 is a 2-piece unit, whereas the V126 is 1 piece. And one last thing to note, is the threads on the end finial also match with a plastic thread on the filling unit, which is unique to most vacuum filling fountain pens. Most vacuum filling fountain pens, just like the V126, feature a metal thread that goes into plastic end finial threads. And that difference in material will eventually cause the plastic threads on the end finial to strip to some extent. So that is somewhat of a design flaw. And then at the bottom, we have the most compact vacuum filling fountain pen that I have, and I believe that is on the market. It is the TWSBI Vac Mini. Unlike the rest of the pens, this is considered a pocket pen, and it does have squared off end finials. Let's take a look at these pens with their caps removed. All caps, with the exception of the Pineider, unscrew. The Pineider has a pull-off cap that is secured in place with a magnet. In their uncapped forms, the TWSBI is again the shortest pen. The Asvine and the Pilot are pretty similar in overall length, and the Pineider is once again the longest of the bunch. Let's take a closer look at these sections and nibs. The Pineider and the Asvine both feature number 6 size stainless steel nibs. The TWSBI is also stainless steel, but it's a smaller size. And the Pilot has a proprietary number 10 size nib, and it's made out of 14 karat gold. All of the pens except for the Pineider have a section that starts with a flare out, and the Pineider has a fairly straight profile down to a dramatic step up to the barrel. In contrast, the rest of these pens have a tapering profile. The next most dramatic step up would be on the TWSBI, and then the Asvine, and the Pilot has the least dramatic step up with a barrel that meshes nicely with the threads. Let's take a look at these pens with their caps posted. All caps post securely with the end finials screwed down. In their posted form, the Pineider is the longest pen, and then the Pilot and the Asvine are about the same length, and once again, the shortest pen is the TWSBI. The TWSBI also is the only pen that has a screw to post cap. Of the pens on the table, the only ones that securely post with the end finials unscrewed are the TWSBI and the Pilot. In order to disassemble the V126, you are going to need an adjustable wrench, and you may also find grippy materials useful. Unfortunately, I forgot to bring them on my trip, so hopefully I'll be able to get by for this video. The cap unscrews. And then if you want to disassemble the cap further, the top finial can be unscrewed. And then you can remove the clip. And inside the cap, we don't have a cap liner, just a step up to seal the nib, which is really nice to see. I love that for clear caps. That makes it so you can really easily see your nib. And then for the grip section, that can be unscrewed from the barrel. At the bottom of the grip section, we can see a pretty generous O-ring, which is really nice to see. That's going to help prevent leakage, which could be a big concern, especially on barrel-filled pens. To remove the nib and feed, you're going to unscrew it from the front of the grip section. And those are being held in place by this collar, which also have 2 O-rings. That's again great to see to prevent leakage. This is where grippy materials is going to be useful, but hopefully I can pull this out without them. Let's see. There we go. And then the nib and feed can just be pulled right off. And then to disassemble the filling system, we're going to unscrew the back piston knob and pull it back a little bit. And then the threads do have 2 flaps right there and there, which we can grab a hold of with our wrench. And to prevent cracking, I prefer to rotate the barrel instead of the wrench. So I'm going to just unscrew that. Pretty soon, the piston unit should be able to be pulled out. At the back of the barrel is a ring which fell right off, so we'll just set that down. And then there isn't really an easy way to disassemble the filling unit itself, so for regular maintenance, I just recommend silicone greasing the seals at the front as well as the 2 seals at the back. And at this point, we have the pen fully disassembled. To reassemble, I'm going to start with this ring. If we look closely, there's one side that has a ridge and one side that's flat. The flat side is supposed to face the barrel, and the ridge is actually supposed to face the end finial. And that's to help conceal this flange that's part of the filling unit. So we'll slide that right there. And then we'll grab our barrel and put the filling unit into it and use the end finial to screw it down into place. Once you get to the bottom, we're going to back it off so we can tighten it down with our wrench. Again, grabbing those 2 flats. And then again, to prevent cracking, I'm going to tighten it by screwing the barrel and not the wrench. Just a finger tight. At this point, the vacuum filling system should be functional. That looks great. And then for the nib and feed, the nib just sits on top. There isn't really anything to locate the nib on the feed or prevent it from traveling too far, but that's okay because of the design of this nib collar. We can see it is keyed. It has a flat right there. Hopefully the camera's picking that up okay. That flat lines up with a flat that is on the bottom of the feed right there. And then you just slide it in place. And it seems like the nib does bottom out inside this nib collar, so that's good. We're then going to screw this back into our grip section. Again, just a finger tight. And then reattach that to our barrel. And then, in order to reassemble the cap, if we look at the top of the cap, we do have a cutout right there, which is for the clip. I'm gonna line that up the best I can. And then grab our top finial to screw it down. As we get towards the bottom of the threads, we'll then reposition this clip so that it is sitting in that recess. There. And then we'll just tighten it down. Great. We'll just reattach the cap to the pen. And just like that, we're ready to ink up. Inking up the Asvine V126. Today I selected a Roshizuku Seiyoro, which is a really nice deep green that I feel like matches this pen color perfectly. We'll unscrew the ink bottle and remove the cap from the pen. Unscrew the back finial and pull the rod all the way back. Submerge the nib into ink. I'll try and tip this so you can see it okay. And push down on the piston rod. That looks like a really nice fill. You could do a super fill, but I don't really want to do that today. In order to do a super fill, you're gonna hold the nib upright, pull the piston all the way down, and then push until the ink starts coming out of the section. Put the nib back into the pen and push it all the way down. I demonstrated that in a separate video, and I'll link that in this one, but I don't feel like risking the mess, especially since I am not at my house. So I'll go ahead and wipe off the nib and put the cap back on the pen, as well as the ink bottle. And at this point, we're ready to write. Okay, writing with the Asvine V126. Cap unscrews, and I am going to unscrew the back finial to open up that shutoff valve and allow ink to flow from the barrel into the section. So again, this is an Asvine V126, and we are writing with a stainless steel medium nib. And it's a nicely tuned nib. It's smooth, it has good flow, and with a heavy hand, it does provide some bounce. However, unfortunately, there is a caveat to that statement. I found when I first purchased this pen that the nib tines were overly tight, and it was somewhat starved of ink. So I took some brass shims and spread those tines, and that allowed the ink flow to really open up. And unfortunately, that has been a pattern with Asvine pens that I've purchased. I mentioned at the top of the video that I have had this pen in other variants, specifically the frosted black matte finish, as well as the clear finish, and both of those models had overly tight tines. And I've also purchased the P20, which had overly tight tines too. Now I decided to not keep those other models because I wasn't a real fan of the finish of those pens, but I liked the teal or dark green color of this pen enough that I decided I would go ahead and tune this nib. And now that I have, I really enjoy writing with it. Our ink is a Shizuku. Sayoro. For flax, I'm going to slightly turn the page. As I mentioned, if you have a heavy hand, you can get some bounce with this nib, and you can see that with line variation as well. I wouldn't quite call this a semi-flex nib, but you certainly can push out a wider line. And then for reverse writing. Actually quite smooth. And the feed mostly kept up. It maybe got a little bit dry as I tried to cross that T, but I would say you could reverse write for a thinner line. Again, with the caveat that I did tune this nib to some extent. So what do I think of the Asvine V126? I'm a big fan of this pen, and that really shouldn't be surprising considering it shares so many similarities with the Pilot Custom 823. I find that the overall build and construction of the pen is very high, especially considering its affordable price. And I love that it has a vacuum filling system, which gives you a huge ink supply, and it also is a safe system to use when traveling. Also, it's an extremely easy pen to maintain. All you need is an adjustable wrench to remove the back piston unit. And while it does share a lot of design similarities with the Pilot Custom 823, I also really love the fact that it's available in far more colors than the 823, and I like the fact that it doesn't have a cap liner, so you can easily appreciate the nib just by looking at the cap, and also you can appreciate the color of the pen throughout the entire body. That is not the case with the 823, which has an opaque cap liner right here, although it's a little bit tricky to see in this finish. Now, with that being said, I do have some concerns with this pen, and I do think that the design is verging on being a clone of the 823, though I think that there are enough differences that I wouldn't quite call it a blatant ripoff. The other concerns that I have is the fact that I had to tune this nib. Again, the tines were quite tight, and unfortunately, that has proven to be a pattern among Asvine pens that I've purchased. And then the other concern I've already mentioned is the fact that the back of the piston unit uses metal threads, and those metal threads mesh with plastic that is on this end finial. Now that's not unusual in vacuum filling fountain pens. In fact, it's pretty much the norm. But unfortunately, what that means is eventually the metal threads are going to win out, and the threads on the finial are likely to strip over extended use. But with that being said, I am a big fan of this pen. I love the different colors, especially this dark green. It really spoke to me with the gold trim. It's extremely affordable, it's high quality, and a really good value. And honestly, if you are in the market for the Pilot Custom 823, this is a pretty decent, affordable option to test the waters and see if that form factor and that unique filling system is right for you. And if you aren't in the market for this and you find that it's just too expensive, this is, again, an affordable option to consider. So I am a big fan of this pen, and even though I own the Pilot Custom 823, I love the color variant of this, and the nib, now that I've tuned it, writes just the way that I like it. So it's a great addition to my collection, and I think it could be a great addition to many others. And that just leaves me to say, thank you for watching.